reflection is from a book called Forgiveness. It's I'll put it in the chat. Forgive. Forgiveness is essential to relieve the burden of fault. To rid yourself of that burden will open the soul to the light. That's from Ambassador Diane Watson. And then I'm sure you've all heard of this book, by Sark. She's very well known, and this book really really changed my life when I got it. I read it I was in college, and it changed my major. I minored in I wanted to minor in women's studies, and it pivoted me a lot. So I'm just going to read this portion of it. Healing places. We heal from the inside in certain outside locations. Here are some of my favorites. Ocean. Waves remind us that there are reliable patterns, like our breath. Also, the negative ions in the air actually change brain waves. Woods. We are surrounded by tree families and sheltered by their canopies. Keep hugging trees. Rocks. We're reminded that growth and change can be microscopic and result in something solid. Waterfalls. Falling water speaks of consistency and power. Gardens. In the garden, our hands touch the growing things and our hearts fill. Tops of hills. Overlooking the world, we see tiny cars or towns and gain perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmine. I always enjoy your reflections. I want to mention that people have accused me of being unstable. And now my computer is accusing me of having an unstable signal. So Carol Francis, would you stay alert if at any point I'm frozen or not here and there's a need to have a facilitator at some point? Please jump in if you don't see me proactive.
Okay.
Thank you. Hopefully that won't happen, but it's happened in some other meetings recently. This is ICUJP. We depend on the kindness of friends and former strangers in financial support for our organization. The announcement that invited you here today has a green panel that indicates a variety of ways in which you can support ICUJP. We have a small part-time paid staff. We are largely a volunteer organization. We've been at this going on 21 years, and we plan to continue as long as the call for peace and justice lasts. And so we do appreciate your support. It's especially helpful if you could set up a monthly contribution that gives us some regularity in our finances. And anything you give is greatly appreciated, and you can rest assured it will all go to the bottom line of our work to advance our motto, which is that religious communities must stop blessing war and violence. This is a time for some brief affiliate announcements, groups directly involved with ICUJP. I'll use this moment to announce a save the date of September 11, 2022. This year we'll be celebrating our George Regas Courageous Peacemaker Awards event. The planning committee is hard at work. The board is meeting today at 9:30 to work on this program. And I can promise you we're in store for an excellent program of honorees and other content, which will honor the memory of George Regas and the spirit of ICUJP. I see hands for other announcements. Michael?
Yeah, briefly, I know I left the board, but I wanted to raise something to the board as a possibility. I sent around this week a sample of, I think it was New York State Peace Action, did a calendar of peace events and upcoming meetings that I was very impressed by. And the thought occurred to me that perhaps ICUJP could play a role in doing something similar, maybe combining efforts with Changelinks, which does a general monthly calendar, but something that could go out. Maybe we could work with Frank Doral or with KPFK and other peace groups like Code Pink to try to produce something like that for the Southern California area of just peace events that are happening, let's say once a month. If we can get groups to let us know in time to be included. So I just wanted to voice that besides having sent it to the list, and maybe people can discuss it at the board to see if there's any energy for it. Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Michael. I made notes on that. We'll take it up at the board meeting. Carol Francis?
Yes, I just would like to invite everybody to stay after the forum. After a 5-minute break, we'll come back and have our first renewed next week, next Friday after, I'm sorry, that's what I meant to say at the beginning. Next board meeting today and next Friday, rejoin us and stay for the first reformed outreach advocacy program committee. I'd love to have you all.
So that'll be July 22 at 9:30 when you join this program. Then you just stay on for this combined outreach and program committee, especially for
basically 9:35.
9:35. And just briefly describe the scope of that, Carol Francis.
We will be looking at the program, the forums that are coming up for the next month, the ones that are already planned and on our calendar, and the ones that we put on our calendar at the board meeting. We'll be looking at those and seeing, okay, if next Friday we're having this topic, what organizations can we outreach to and ask them to tune into it? The next Friday, we're speaking on this other topic. What are the organizations? How do we reach out to them and invite them specifically to it? We're building our base and supporting other organizations in their work, connecting ourselves.
Right. Thank you. And you and Michael take your hands down when you've spoken. Just briefly, we've been joined by a few other people on my screen. I see Mark Yoshida, if you would briefly introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, Mark Yoshida. I am a coworker of Liana and Jeff at Asian Americans Advancing Justice. I'm here to learn more about my organization that I've been a part of for nearly 27 years. So thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. And I see Anthony Manousis.
Good morning, everybody. I am Anthony Medusas, and I'm a member of the board, co-founder of a housing justice organization called Making Housing and Community Happen, and also with the Orange Grove Quaker meeting here in Pasadena. Good to be here this morning.
We had affiliate announcements. I understand you're planning a program.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, Kath Rogers, who spoke here, and gave an excellent presentation about housing as a human right and the campaign in LA to have a transfer tax to raise money for homeless people and renters will be speaking at our Making Housing Community Happen monthly Housing Justice Forum on July 28th. That's a Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
Wonderful. I see Dick Bunce. Welcome. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm with Claremont United Methodist Church and with Cobb Institute, Latino Roundtable out in the Pomona, Claremont area.
Thank you, Dick. So we have a tradition in allowing speakers to more expansively introduce themselves as you present your program. And I believe I heard the notion that we love to hear about people's journey to this work, spiritual and otherwise, which is important to us. So who among your group will kick it off?
Yeah, do you want to go first? I can go first.
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Leanna, and I'm the communications specialist at Asian Americans Advancing Justice Los Angeles. We'll go more in depth about the organization when we start our presentation, but we're one of the largest or the largest organization in a nation serving the Asian American community for legal services and civil rights. So I joined the organization just over 3 years ago, and I joined straight out of college as an intern. And it was my first gig out of school. I joined in as a development intern, so in our fundraising and events planning teams. And I really enjoyed our work. I really loved the mission. I knew I always wanted to be involved in community and find my own community in the Asian American community in Southern California. And since then, I've kind of moved around the organization and helped and worked in a bunch of different places. I helped plan our galas, and in 2020, I was part of our census team in outreach to the undercounted communities in Southern California. And then most recently, I joined our communications team. And what I do is I manage the communications of our policy and programs. So programs that includes like citizenship, which Mark, who was so kind to join us this morning, is a citizenship attorney. And he helps our clients seek citizenship and help with immigration. So yeah, somehow like my path has led me to this point where I can serve the organization with our comms needs. And it's been a really wonderful experience. And I'm really excited to tell you everyone more about the incredible work we're doing. Jeff?
Awesome. Thank you, Leanna. Yeah, so for me, I am originally from Chicago. I was born and raised there. I'm a child of immigrants from the Philippines. And I would say that my parents and my family raising me with a really strong sense of being proud of my heritage and where I come from and our culture. I think that kind of helped build me a foundation of that I belonged in this type of advocacy work and civil rights work. I think growing up in Chicago, in the suburbs of Chicago, as one of the few Filipino or Asian kids, I think I realized that I felt like I was voiceless. And I was pretty young when I learned this or had this feeling. And I think that kind of drove me to like find ways to like find my voice and to find community spaces in Chicago that would allow me to, you know, be proud of who I am and where I came from and my community. So I actually was an intern or part of a program with the Chicago affiliate in 2010 when I was 21 and in college there. I moved to LA in 2012. I knew that there was an LA branch or an LA affiliate, and I was like working hard to get a job here. And eventually got the position in 2016, working for a citizenship grant, so kind of with Mark's team. And so I was formerly with comms. Currently, I am the community relations lead. So me and Leanna did have some crossover on the same team, but I also do remember when she was an intern and we're talking at lunch about her. So it's good for me to see her grow into this role of 3 years. And I will say personally, on my like spiritual religious level, I grew up Catholic. My grandma on my mom's side is really religious. I grew up really religious as well. And it's, it's cool to find that religion and spirituality can have a place in social justice. Because I think for so long in my journey of social justice, I didn't feel like it fit properly. But coming to this organization and meeting like folks like you who find this balance of just knowing to, work past our differences and understanding that, we all want freedom, we all want to have a life that's full and fruitful. I think it's beautiful to know that we can come with so many different beliefs and so many different backgrounds, but know that we're working towards the same goal of just being there for each other and being human. So I do love the fact that I've learned to meet folks like, Clue Justice and y'all. So I look forward to working with y'all, partnering more in the future, and just being here this morning. So thank you. So, and I will share my screen, sorry. So I'll share my screen and we'll start the presentation. Here we go. All right. Let me.
Okay, so basically we gave both of our introductions about both our roles. Really briefly, I also wanted to mention that I am also Chinese American and I'm originally from New York. And I too was also really inspired by my own heritage and to try and get connected more with my roots and what that looked like as an Asian American in our country. And so, yeah, just to start us off, again, we're one of the nation's largest civil rights and legal services organizations for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander community. And we're actually part of a network of independent affiliates. So they aren't necessarily chapters. We all do our individual independent work, but we do come together and collaborate with each other, and we'll do statements together. And so our other affiliates are in Atlanta, Chicago, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C.
Yeah, so an overview of our community. We are very diverse and extensive community across the country. So that's why our point here in the blue box about our community not being a monolith is that, I think sometimes folks naturally we want to group together communities and think about how they're similar, or assume that they're similar, but the fact of the matter is our community, our API community is at least formed from about 40 different countries across the world, and we have about 30 different languages. So the diversity is beautiful, but that does present challenges in terms of how we outreach to them. I think, Leanna and me, on our comms work, it does kind of have a lot more steps to making sure that we're, offering in-language materials and outreaching properly to each community who might be monolingual, who might be low English proficient. And then our top wording here, that we protect, resist, and advance, that was actually established post-Trump 2017 to making sure that we are really making sure that we protect the communities that we serve, that we're resisting anti-racist, anti-immigrant rhetoric, and then we're advancing the justice and our livelihoods for our community. And kind of as a more deeper look into our LA County, there's 1.5 million APIs approximately. Over half of the API community in LA County is foreign born. So there's a large amount of our community that is immigrants, or for at least first generation immigrants. And then 20% of us, 20% is the rate at which we're growing. So actually, I do believe that by 2050, we're on par to be like the largest minority group in the United States. So our voting bloc is growing, our voice is growing. And then unfortunately, this number is pretty high. It's 6,600 hate incidences that have occurred, or that have been recorded at least, in the years of 2020 to 2021. So I do want to preface that that number is high, but I think the reality is that so many hate incidences go unreported. So the number actually could be higher, truthfully. I think a lot of times, we work with another organization called Stop API Hate, which is a hate tracking software or a website to making sure that we can record any types of incidences that are even verbal to physical types of assault. But a lot of times, I think even before 2020, people were really scared to report or even just report it onto a website like that, much alone to the police or any type of law enforcement. So I just do want to preface that even though the number is high for the last 20 to 2021, it's probably way higher actually. And unfortunately, these attacks are still occurring across the country to this day.
So just a little bit about how our organization was founded. We were founded at probably one of the most pivotal points in AAPI civil rights history. So just a little bit of like historical background. In 1983, there was a case in Detroit. At the time, there was a lot of competition in the auto industry with the Japanese auto industry. So there were a lot of high tensions with the white auto workers that believed that Japanese auto workers were taking their jobs. So there was a man named Vincent Chin who worked in the Detroit auto industry. And the night before his wedding, he was murdered by two white auto workers who mistakenly believed him to be a Japanese auto worker, but he was actually Chinese. And this murder was not dealt with justly in the justice system, and it sparked a huge wave of API civil rights movements, and it actually inspired our founder, Stuart Kuo, to found at the time called Asian Pacific American Legal Center. So at the time, he provided out-of-state counsel for this hate crime case, and this moment is the reason that me and Jeff are here able to give this presentation, and why we're able to provide all this work that we do. It's sad to see that hate crimes are still such like a huge issue in our community, but we always try to look back and remember like where we came from, what are the cases that we can see that have occurred. And in the history of our organization, we've actually had many great successful litigation cases, and the most famous one of all of them was with our litigation director, Julie Sue, who you can see here. It was the first case of modern slavery in the United States. So there was a group of 72 Thai workers who were held in El Monte, and they were illegally trafficked and held there working in this garment sweatshop. And we were able to litigate this case and also change labor laws in the US forever. And to this day, actually, those Thai workers who were in this case and suffered, and literally, I remember I went to an event a few years ago and they talked about how they would be able to see the light underneath the doors because they were locked in this room where they were sewing these garments, and they would try to signal to the people outside that they were locked in this place. This super resilient group of people, every year they celebrate their freedom anniversary with Stuart and Julie, and I have to say, like, they're just the most incredible, kind group of people. And it's a case that to this day, like, really also impacts our work. And it's definitely one of our strongest pieces of legacy.
Yeah, to add on to that, actually, when Leanna was an intern in 2019, she helped put on the event celebrating them, which is their 24 years. Is that right, Leanna?
Yes.
And yeah, so I met them there as well. And it was like Leanna said, it's inspiring to have that much resilience and that much belief that, you come to this country under the guise of new opportunities and a better life. But then, as Lena mentioned, the folks that brought them over here, like, they took their papers, they put them in this apartment complex, and they're working in these really, really bad conditions, and they really just believed that they could get a better life. And I do want to shout out that Mark Yoshida actually was part of the team that helped them get citizenship. So Mark was actually huge in that work. The connection with Mark being such a prevalent voice and just part of that team, like helping them achieve their freedom here.
And the litigation director, who we still have super strong ties with, Julie Sue, she's currently actually now the U.S. Deputy Secretary of Labor, so part of the Biden administration, and we're always so proud to see our alumni go out and do our great work.
Yeah, so thanks, Leanna. Yes, so currently our organization is at least 70 staff members. Our building's actually right on the corner of Wilshire and Lucas, so right on the cusp of downtown LA, right before the 110 overpass. And yeah, so honestly, our work isn't complete without our volunteers. So our volunteers range from pro bono attorneys who help us do cases. They help us with direct service cases for citizenship, immigration, but also with bigger cases around redistricting and workers' rights. We work with community leaders, so grassroots leaders on the ground who organize communities, folks like you who organize among the spiritual and religious communities. We're social workers as well, and advocates and researchers. Our researchers are super key to making sure that we are, counting our community number, but also understanding that we have, or understanding their, our community's specific narratives, so we can understand how to lift them up and how to build policy around the actual lives that we're living. And yeah, and this is our current CEO is Connie Chung Jo. And then you can see on our left side of the screen is an outreach event that we did during the pandemic to let our community know about safety regarding the pandemic, but also this is also in Koreatown, and we're doing some redistricting work in that neighborhood.
So since the beginning of COVID-19, one of our biggest projects and long-term projects has been the fight against anti-Asian discrimination. So we do a lot of work trying to combat this rising tide, and all that work falls into these areas of public awareness, legal assistance, and policy and data. So for public awareness, we created a PSA in collaboration with Ken Jong. And he was so kind to donate his voice and do our voiceover for our PSA, which we'll actually play for you guys. And we do bystander intervention trainings, which are trainings that help people learn how to be an effective and safe bystander in acts of hate. And a lot of what we do is also coalition and partnership building, educating and reaching out to organizations like you guys and amplifying API voices in these spaces. There are so many organizations and nonprofits that have popped up since the rise of anti-Asian hate. And one of our partners called Seniors Fight Back, this woman experiences an act of hate, and she developed a nonprofit teaching self-defense classes to our community members to help defend themselves in acts of hate, which is super wonderful to see. And it's really great to see people in our community doing this kind of work. And at the heart of everything we do is definitely our legal assistance and our helplines. So we offer helplines in 7 different Asian languages. And we offer advocacy, and we can represent them in legal cases and protect them against housing discrimination, and also impact litigation cases. And lastly, we also have extensive policy. We do a lot of work in policy and data. So we do a lot of data analysis and reporting. We have released many a report about the demographics of the Asian American community, which they sound like they're super like all numbers and like kind of boring, but it's so important to have these numbers about our community, our demographics, in order to know like how many of these anti-Asian hate incidents are happening. We have to know like what are the numbers of our community, what are our population numbers, and emphasizing that we are not a monolith. Like, what are the denominations of the different ethnicities within our communities? And because of this work that we do, we're able to advocate for policies and bills through this California legislature. And most recently, we've been able to secure $5 million in the California budget for dual immersion programs for Asian language teachers. So this means that there will be students that can learn in 2 languages at school, like in Mandarin and English, or in Korean and English. And it isn't just learning a second language, it's actually learning math or history in a second language. So this, including like a lot of other work that we do, including education equity, is just all comes under this umbrella of combating anti-Asian hate.
And then real quick, I just want to go back to Leanna's point about the monoliths. I don't think I explained it properly enough in my slide, is that it is kind of damaging to talk about the API Asian American Pacific Islander community as a monolith, because we do face our own set of challenges per community. I think it's a really, really bad assumption to assume that, maybe that all Asian American Pacific Islanders are like middle class or have access to quality healthcare or quality services or resources, because a lot of times within our community, there's refugees. In our community, there's folks that are living below the poverty line. And I think we have to understand that a lot of these times are these public services that are available to the communities, who live in poverty or live in poorly resourced neighborhoods or areas of Southern California are not good quality. So that's why our organization is in place to make sure that we are spotlighting those challenges that they face, and making sure that we can understand that, different communities, given their histories in this country, in their home countries, that we're making sure that we can prioritize what they go through in their specific community, like the Cambodian community or the Filipino community, specifically, so we can make sure that we are serving them properly. And I will say that our latest report on San Gabriel Valley is from 2018. And it's not your typical like just PDF of the report, which is great, but pretty dense. It's actually like an interactive map that has a lot of great stories, great narratives of folks in that community. So we'll make sure to share that link with either Morgan or with Rick to send to you all after the presentation. Yeah, so as Leanna was mentioning, our public awareness about our community is key to making sure that the greater non-API community is aware of who we are, so that they can understand that we have challenges, that we are not a monolith, that we are different and diverse. And yeah, so we worked really hard the last, 3 years now in this pandemic, especially to make sure that, we're really building bridges across communities. So for instance, at the top of the right-hand side, we work with at least 30 coalition partners who are both API and non-API members who are committed to combating hate. For instance, we work with the LA Human Relations Commission in a coalition called LA versus Hate, making sure that we are, just at least building awareness, understanding that we have a shared fight to make sure that we can, have Angelenos live in a city, in a county that is safe for folks to be different, for them to be diverse and to have their own lives. Luckily, I guess the silver lining through all of the hardships in the last 3 years, both personally and as a community, people have actually kind of been forced to be a little bit more active online for safety reasons for COVID. So I would say that there's been, more community members, and this number is 70,000, helping us spread the word about not only our organization, but the challenges that our community faces. So that's something that we do really stand proud by, that we're able to activate and just build awareness around our community's needs. I guess kind of a good number for us in terms of the comms team is the 5.1 billion impressions, making sure that we're at least touching folks in any kind of way, in any type of media platform, making sure that we are teaching folks, or at least giving them an entry point to our community and organizations' challenges, but also our work.
So here at the heart of like our anti-Asian discrimination work are our bystander intervention trainings. And becoming a bystander is probably one of the most effective ways that you can support the community in these acts of hate. So we do offer these trainings every month. And in these trainings, we teach people how to be effective bystanders by educating everyone about the 5 Ds, which are distract, delegate, document, delay, and direct. So it's a really fun training. We provide a safe space for everyone to be empowered and educated on prioritizing safety. And we've trained over 10,000 community members since we've launched the program. And we've only had the program, I think, just about like a year and a half or so. And so we're going to play the PSA, voiced by Ken Jeong. And actually next week, we're going to have a English bystander intervention training on Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. So we'll definitely be sending the link over, and we highly recommend everyone try to join us. And if you can't, next month, we'll also have more. It's a really great way to get involved. So yeah, let's take a look at the PSA.
And also, if ICUJP wants to do their own kind of training with your board and their members, we can also make that happen with the bystander training interventions, the programming director. So just let us know as well. So let me play the PSA. So Ken Jeong is also he was from The Hangover, but also he's a judge on The Masked Singer on Fox. If you just need more context about who he is. But yeah, he's a doctor. He is really vocal for the community, and he did this for free. So we were really thankful to him to do this for us in partnership with us in time that was super important for our community. So I'll play this.
And yes, the training next week is virtual.
Oh, yeah.
19 pandemic.
Oh, sorry.
Since the COVID.
Oh wait, Jeff, the screen isn't, yeah.
Not working. Okay, hold on, sorry. Let me share it again. Here we go. Okay. Okay, here we go. Thanks, Leanna.
Since the COVID-19 pandemic.
Oh, I think it's lagging actually.
Vulnerable and defenseless.
It is.
Can you start from the beginning?
Yeah,
Sorry.
Okay, let's try once more. Okay.
Since the COVID-19 pandemic, Asian Americans have faced an alarming rise in hate incidents. Many of the victims are also some of the most vulnerable and defenseless. So what can you do to help? One way is through bystander intervention, a set of tools that can prevent verbal harassment from escalating into violence. Here are the 5 Ds of bystander intervention. Number 1, distract. Take an indirect approach. Draw attention away from the victim. Number 2, delegate. Get help from somebody else. Find a person in a position of authority nearby and ask them for assistance. Number 3, document. Record a video of the incident at a safe distance. Film signs or landmarks to identify the location and say the date and time. Number 4, delay. After the incident is over, check in with the victim. Ask if they're all right or if they need you to take them somewhere. Number 5, direct. After assessing your safety, speak up. Tell the aggressor to leave the victim alone in a firm and clear voice. We all play a role in keeping our community safe. Let's start today. Learn more at advancingjustice.org.
Awesome. Cool. Stop the share.
So just a really quick correction. The training next week is actually on Tuesday. So that's July 19th, Tuesday at 12:30 p.m. if you're able to join us, or we can do a private ICUJP training, as Jeff mentioned.
sorry. Okay, and also in addition to these trainings, we also do a how to respond training. So if it happens to you, so these are trainings to be a bystander, to make sure that you are, making sure that if you see something happening, you know how to safely intervene. I know that they do also do how to respond. So if you are unfortunately the victim of a hate incident, you can also learn how to do that as well. So they're all in the link here, but we'll share the links and everything afterwards, so we can make sure that if you all want to pursue one, we can make it happen. Yeah, so we offer legal assistance to our community in all the various ways. So Lena kind of mentioned it a little bit in our programs, but we offered assistance in so many different ways over the last almost 40 years now to the LA community. So there's domestic violence and family law. So we help with restraining orders, with immigration. It was huge before the Trump administration with DACA and DACA renewals. We were one of the biggest hubs for helping community members be at least on the pathway to get some citizenship or some paperwork. Again, we do strategic litigation, which covers the work of human trafficking, workers' rights, voter redistricting, and so forth. And we also want to make sure that we also do have pretty robust policy team. So we work with our SF affiliate, Asian Law Caucus, and we have a lobbyist in Sacramento who helps us lobby for causes and helps us write bills and work with elected officials to get those bills passed and move them forward. And again, we wouldn't be able to do all this work without the help of pro bono attorneys who help us at our legal clinic. So they help with citizenship clinics, they help with housing rights as of late. And yeah.
So one of the biggest issues that our API community has encountered since the COVID-19 pandemic has been facing the problem of housing protection and tenant eviction. So in order to combat this problem, we've been offering monthly no-cost clinics, eviction and legal services, tenant assistance, and especially like tenant rights education. And one of the cases that we've been working on is actually there is a building that hasn't had a working elevator, and it hasn't been safe for the elder community in that building to actually just like be able to get in and get out of the building. So we've been working on a case that's been filed against a landlord to get those issues fixed and make sure that the tenants are protected. So this is like one of the big parts of how we've been combating anti-Asian hate.
Yeah, just more on what Lena was mentioning. So it's Cafe Manor in Chinatown, and yeah, as Lena mentioned, it's housing a lot of low-income Chinese American seniors, and it's been a whole just terrible situation because one, they're in the pandemic, two, they can't go up and down the stairs to get themselves food. Like the basics like that. And I think, anyone who lives in this country should have at least basic housing that can serve them properly, right? And we're actually seeing this too, is that the reason why these also started was because given the rise of API hate, we want to make sure that people aren't being evicted or being, not getting their apartments or their housing fixed on time because of their ethnicity. Because we have been seeing that that's a case around the country, and we want to make sure that if they're facing some type of discrimination when it comes to housing and their just living situation, that we make sure that we can help them and file those cases on their behalf. Yeah, so as you mentioned a little bit before, is that data on our community is so important because it gives us the hard numbers to make sure that we are, really working for ourselves in Sacramento, making sure that we can give California APIs a voice and a better life. Lena mentioned the dual immersion bill that passed, so we can certify more API teachers or teachers that speak API languages. So in this case, it's a lot of Vietnamese, Korean, and Mandarin speaking teachers, but also Tagalog as well. Yeah, so as Lena mentioned too, is that we have all these reports over the last few years that talk about different communities. So there's elders in LA, API elders in LA, specifically the NHPI community, so Native Hawaiian Pacific Islander community as well, a report that was done a couple years ago. They're dense, but I feel like, it provides a really great viewpoint into our community that I don't think is necessarily seen before the last few years at a mainstream kind of wide level. So, yeah, so we're going to show you one more video of our ALIP helpline. So ALIP stands for Asian Language Legal Intake Project. And as Leanna mentioned, we serve in 7 languages. Those languages are Chinese, both Mandarin and Cantonese, Korean, Tagalog, which is Filipino, Thai, Vietnamese, and Hindi. And we want to make sure that folks in the community who are monolingual, who speak one language, have a chance to at least seek help. And if we can't provide them the language assistance, we can always refer them out to a partner, because we can only do so much, but we have a lot of partners across the county and across the state who can at least provide translation services for us so that we can know how to serve them and work with them. And if we can't, and then also we find sometimes our pro bono attorneys speak those languages as well. So we want to show you that video because honestly, our ALIP team, they're kind of like the unsung heroes of our organization. So when you think of our organization, you think of like the lawyers, kind of the more like, I would say like more like shiny types of kind of the shiny part of the organization. But our ALIP team, the team at the gate, helping these community members in and giving them a safe space to just share their needs and share their want for help. And they're just an amazing group of colleagues that me, Leanna, and Mark are so happy to work with. So let me share that real fast with you all. Give me 1 second. Okay. Share screen. Okay. Share. Okay. Full screen. Here we go. And Leanna, let me know if it lags again. Hopefully not.
Sure.
Hello? Ikaw po ay tumatawag sa Asian American Advancing Justice?
ฮัลโหลครับ สวัสดีครับ สายภาษาไทยครับ Asian American Advancing Justice
喂，你好，这里是亚美公益时间中心。您需要什么样的帮助吗？
This gentleman, he called English line, and he just said, I saw your agency and helping this and that, and I don't know if you can help me because I'm not Asian.
One day I got a call from a Chinese lady living in Los Angeles
who needs help with the applying U.S. citizenship.
And that's why I said, whenever you call other agency, just ignore the name and try to reach out to see if they're going to help you or not. You never know if you not try, right?
She was attacked from behind and she lost her consciousness.
So I've got a chance to speak with her husband, who is about, I would say 74, 75 years
So
old.
after she was released from hospital, she tried to get her police report.
He told me that he just wanted his wife to become a citizenship before he died.
She was a new immigrant, and of course, she could not understand the phone call.
That's the first thing they ask is like they have no idea if there's any program that they can get help with this kind of stuff that happened to them.
And after she tried herself for months, she finally gave up and called our organization.
I told him that yes, I would do my best on my ability to help your wife to become a U.S. citizen.
So our attorney helped her draft out the requesting documents and mailed it to the police department.
The client just called me again, and I thought she had a problem or an issue with the application that she sent to the USCIS. But she told me that her husband passed away.
He spoke to me, the last word, he hung up the phone, he said, I am so glad that I get to talk to you because I call a lot of places they didn't even bother to pick up the phone. So I talked to a real person. So to me, it's like, you know.
And she actually got an interview coming up right in the corner, which is in April this year.
I think as a victim of crime, getting a police report is one of her basic rights.
So hopefully she will pass it, and this could be her last gift to her husband.
The language barrier makes it harder to do it herself.
And that's the reason why I like what I'm doing, because I come from Cambodia myself as a refugee, no English, no nothing.
I was in the U.S. Army for 8 years. So I served the Army as the infantry.
As a Chinese legal advocate, my role is to guide my Chinese community to get access to their legal resources.
It's very interesting, you know, from the grunt came down to serving the community with the legal issues.
And I move from that environment and try to help others. And that's my purpose here, is helping others. So, yeah.
So I am happy to be here, and I will continue to serve the community. Thank you.
Hi, this is Asian American Advancing Justice. How can I help you?
Yeah, so just a little look at our ALIP team. Again, we appreciate them on a different level. They're just an amazing group of people who care so much for the community. And as you can tell, you know, I want to kind of circle back, because that a lot of this work they were doing is human work. So the reward is just knowing that, one, you're seeing a client or team member, you know, get the service they need, kind of get over a really bad hump in their life, or a really bad divot in the road. I think even for me and Leanna on the comm side, you know, we just know that we're helping bridge that gap between services and the community, or at least education in the community. And also, if we can't provide the services in-house, we do a referral outside to a partner, because we can only do so much. But there's a lot of organizations that do focus on Asian AAPI mental health, AAPI health services at a really robust level. So we are pretty plugged into a really great network of communities, organizations across the county. So yeah, I believe that's the completion of our presentation. So we can start the Q&A if you'd like to. Yeah. Leanna, if you want to share something else to close.
Oh, so just a couple of plugs. We're going to send around some links, but please feel free to follow us on our social media. We're always posting educational materials. We're posting my personal favorite client stories, so you can hear more about these clients that have faced like these incredible issues and the work that our attorneys are doing. And also on our website, we always have volunteer opportunities. So we'll also send that link around so you can check out how you can help us, whether that's through canvassing or through different events. And yeah, so that's just a little bit about how you can get involved. And of course, like signing up for our bystander intervention training.
Oh, and then one last thing is that we're going to be rebranding on Monday officially to a new name. Well, same name, but just instead of Los Angeles, it'll be Southern California. So there'll be some changes in some of the logos and links, but we'll make sure to update everything properly on Monday to you all. Yeah, sorry about that.
Wonderful. This was such a good presentation, and I learned so much. Would you restore us to the gallery view so everybody can see each other? And I certainly have some questions, but let's go to people who've raised their hands so far. Rick.
Folks, thank you very much for the presentation. I just have to echo what Steve said. And for those of us who don't know the behind the scenes, I wanted to thank Jeff and Liana and everybody at the organization, because they've, with the COVID epidemic still running around, these guys have had to deal with that. And I wanted to thank you very much, and good to see you that both you guys are looking really good. And I need to know your secrets. And and I think this is something with the bystander training is something that I really think that ICUJP obviously would be very interested in being involved with. And I hope that we can make this something where we can communicate it to other peace and justice groups in the LA area too, as a broader initiative. So thank you guys very much.
And nice to meet you in person or on camera, Rick.
Oh, in cyberspace? Yes.
In cyberspace, yeah. To Maggie too. Yeah, me and Leanna just got over COVID about a week apart. So I'm on like the tail end of mine, and Leanna's as well. So yeah, this pandemic has been tiring to say the least, but we're feeling way better. Yeah.
Good. Thank you for being here.
Well, we're so glad to hear you're both recovering. Dick Bunce.
Yeah, I noticed your reference to quite a number of organizations that you are working cooperatively with. And I wonder if you could indicate who some of them are. I think you very briefly mentioned Human Relations Commission. I wasn't sure whether that was with the county or the city, and what, the main partnerships you have, and what skills they bring and what special resources they bring to the work.
Yeah, so currently we're working with the County Human Relations Commission. We meet with them. So we meet as the LA versus Hate Coalition. I believe it's monthly. It's at least quarterly. And we are working on ways to kind of build public awareness about hate crimes in LA, and how to make sure that if people are sadly a victim of a hate crime or hate incident, that they know they know that they can reach out to either one of the partners or part of the coalition, or they can reach out to 211. And then we also we are also part of a board, the LA API board with the DA's office in the city. So we meet once a month to talk about how to address hate crimes and hate incidences, and hopefully trying to formulate a kind of broader either policy change in the city, or try to push for a campaign to build awareness nationwide, because nationwide there's not like a hate crime law in every state. So we're trying to either build awareness around that. So we're trying to figure out how to kind of zone in on one issue for the LA API board that I'm part of. So the DA's office, the DA's office AAPI board. And then I also meet with the Human Relations Commission on another effort. We meet monthly with other AAPI community leaders to either just report what we're hearing in the community from directly to our organizations. So making sure that they're at least brought to the top of the Human Relations Commission's eyes or list or priority list. And then so that they're aware. So that's kind of where we work with in terms of LA County, LA City organizations. But I've been with org for about 6 years now. So I've seen the gambit of us work with partners that serve immigrant communities in different culture communities. So Chirla is, they focus on the Central American immigrants and refugees. We work together with Clue Justice on different efforts. A lot of the efforts that we work on with cross community is just signing on letters to kind of show that we're united across the board on a certain issue, usually about immigrants being allowed to be in the country. And yeah, hopefully that answers your question, Dick. But yes, we have a huge list, and as a communications lead, I'm kind of keeping track of who we work with. But yeah, I'm trying to go back in time and see if it's touch point that we worked on with them. I'm making sure that we keep them in mind for the future. Yeah.
And most recently, our CEO actually formed a coalition with a group of organizations that are led by female executive leaders that that serve communities of color. So it's a really incredible group of women that that are the leaders of Advancing Justice LA, CARECEN, which is the Central American Resource Center, Community Coalition, who helps with community with substance abuse, Brotherhood Crusade, who helps the Black community. And yeah, so we're always forming partnerships. Almost like every day, I feel like I'm seeing something that we're collaborating with a partner on. So we're it's really incredible to see all the collaborative work that we do. And that's all thanks to Jeff, who somehow manages to balance all these different partnerships.
Great. That's terrific. Michael.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to offer something a little tangential, but it's just a testimony. When, before COVID, I think that your organization was one of the most welcoming and hospitable to other movements and organizations. I've been at many, many events that were held at your space, including the one that directed Impacted Here, which was a program by Fuel, the Families United to End Life Imprisonment, and the Drop LWOP campaign, where we had a speaker that I met through, a meeting that took place at your facility. So I just want to share that with everybody that might not be aware of that aspect of your work, which is very, very welcoming. I did want to ask two things. One is I mentioned I'm on the local station board of KPFK, and we also have a community advisory board, which we finally got started up this year. And I'm wondering if there might be somebody from your organization who'd be interested in participating in that. So I'll try to be in touch with you about that.
Yeah.
The question I wanted to ask was regarding if you could say any work you've done around sort of internal contradictions, or I know some of us went to the program after the shooting in Orange County, and there was a very, very powerful event downtown that I think the Black Jewish Justice Alliance and some other organizations were involved in, at which a number of Taiwanese Americans spoke about the sort of invisibilization of their own particular community. And, just in terms of contradictions between the different groups within, that very broad, I'm just curious about that as well.
Well, I believe we did a statement about the Taiwanese church shooting. Did we, Leanna?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. And yeah, Michael, it's hard because, I think me coming to this organization, I became privy to like how many like inter-community fights that there are, kind of conflicts that there are. And it's I would say, to me, honestly, like it's sad, because it's more disheartening and sad because, I think, like we already had to fight so much, like just being here in this country and just, living as this community and as ourselves. And I think it's something that we want to explore more, honestly, and have more internal discussions about. But there hasn't been, at least for me in my meetings with like our executive team and my supervisor, that there hasn't been anything that's been brought to light. But I think it's something that you raised for me that I should bring to the table and see how we can either learn more from, I can learn more from the partners when I meet with them month to month, and maybe see and just learn and then bring it back to my organization. But yeah, that's definitely a good point that you brought up to us to consider moving forward more. Yeah. So as of right now, yeah, nothing as a hard decision as of right now. Yeah.
Thank you. I'll have a similar question in a few moments. Phil, you're on mute.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Some years ago, back in the mid 90s, I was involved with APALC in a program called Leadership Development and Interethnic Relations.
Yeah.
I participated in that program, and I was very impressed with the whole work of APALC, and hadn't realized it, that it morphed into this. Anyway, I'm a great admirer of Stuart Quo. My question is the Leadership Development and Interethnic Relations program still going on?
Yeah, Phil, sadly, it's not. When I was still here in 2016, I believe it went on for a couple more years, but then we didn't have capacity for it. So it hasn't been active for at least the last 2 years. But I'm not sure if you know Eileen Louie. I think she was leading it in the time that you were part of it. But Eileen Louie, who's my supervisor, she's still part of it. She's back to the organization. So, to know that you had a good experience with the leader program is great, because I think I would hear that too. And when I was still active when I was first starting here. But yeah, sadly, it's not active as of right now. I can bring it back to her and let her know that I met you and that you said it was a great experience for you. Yeah.
It was a big part of my education and
nice.
involvement in interracial work. And I'm sorry to see it go.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Thank you both on that. Ruby, by the way, introduce yourself so our speakers know who you are, and ask your question.
You know what? I'm one who's been around a lot of different languages in school. And my name is Reverend Ruby, and I've always been interested in other cultures. But in school, I learned French, German, and Spanish, but not the Asian languages. So I was very happy to hear that they are in schools now. And so anyway, I'm with the board of ICUJP. I've been interested in working with people who were in prison and supporting them for their new design for living and positive changes in their lives, and also with other people. That's basically a lot of times where I am in the morning, starting at 4 o'clock, with other people that are calling me. I work with I'm a metaphysical minister, so I'm with all different other ministers. And also now, since I don't drive, I meet so many different people that are all different nationalities and everything. And I mean, it reminds me of when I was a child. So this is really important to me, that this is a learning time, and for them to put it in schools just as well as they do Spanish. So I thank you young people for doing this, and just to know how I can support you in this for the positive changes in the cultures, working together for God the good.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the work that you do.
Yeah, seriously, it's super important as well.
Excellent. Let me ask one of my questions, and then I'll come back on the stack after Carol Francis. I'll save my question about bystander intervention, because we may be able to spend a few minutes on that separately. But I'm interested in this question. In the popular media, mainstream corporate media, sometimes they pit the Black community and the Asian communities against each other. And I'm really interested in your thinking about that, both each of you, as well as if you've institutionalized or developed. I think you mentioned some coalitional work in the Black community already, but I'd appreciate your expanding on that and how you've tried to address those issues.
Leah, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. So solidarity between communities, I think, is really at the center, at the core of our work. It is so important for us to recognize recognize like the solidarity between us and the intersectionality within our communities. And I feel like the relationships between the Asian and the Black communities, like this is something that our organization has always worked on. And I feel like our staff members also, like this is like something that's really near and dear to our heart. I know like we've worked with many Black organizations. Brotherhood Crusade, like I mentioned, is led by an incredible person, Charisse, who's been a leader ever. And the organization was founded by her father. And our CEO, Connie, she has a really close relationship with Charisse, and they're both part of this sisterhood trust that they created, which is to create a space and uplift each other in the social justice world, which is actually very predominantly dominated by men. And they're able to find solidarity in that they were both women of color trying to navigate this social justice world. So I can say that like at an interpersonal level and at an organizational level, it's always something that we're trying to focus on and work on. And I mean, most recently, one of the most incredible things we're able to do, it was the anniversary of Saigu, or the otherwise known as the LA riots. But in the social justice world, we call it the LA uprising. And in this event, as you may know, has caused a lot of strife between the Korean and the Black community. And we were able to hold an anniversary event in collaboration between Korean organizations and Black organizations to come together and create a space to heal and reflect on what happened all those years ago. And it's just really incredible to see how far we've come in relationships between our communities. And I mean, it's not to say that we can, it's definitely, I mean, with community partnerships and everything, there's definitely a lot of differences that we got to work through together. But like this Saigu event, being able to see our organizations work together and like celebrate each other and commemorate each other has been really, really incredible. Like even if it's just through the smallest things as having these performances that are held by biracial Korean and Black musicians, and being able to hold panels and talks about what happened at the time, and having the perspective of like how the Korean community was hurt, how the Black community was hurt. So yeah, it's just like one example of one of the ways that we're trying to develop these relationships.
Jeff, do you want to add some insight?
I think for me personally, I think dispelling anti-Blackness in the APEC community has been one of my personal kind of missions. And I think really working to build better relations has been a personal thing of mine too, between the Black community and the APEC community. I think, I think we have to be cognizant of the past and of the systematic issues that, that kind of occur between the two communities. I think it's, you have to acknowledge the realities of what, for instance, like Asian business owners and Black communities means. I think you have to understand the fact that that there is hardships, that there is these divides. And I think at the core of it too, or one of the cores of it is that it's white supremacy. I think white supremacy creates this idea that communities of color have to fight over scraps, when in reality, there's so much to go around. And I think, I think it's easy to buy into that narrative because, you're growing up thinking that there's only a small portion for you, and not remembering that, hey, like, wait, we can get the whole plate, and we can share this plate. And and I think you have to acknowledge the fact that there's issues, because if you pretend that there's not, and you pretend that there's not a really bad history or dark history there, then you can't, you don't know how to grow or how to move forward after that, or how to build properly after that. And I do think the media chooses, I think, to promote more stories about Black and Asian hate crimes. So I don't believe that the only folks committing, acts of hate against Asians are Black folks. And I believe that I saw a story this morning about it, and I'm like, there's no way that this is the case. I feel like it's an easy target. It's an easy choice to pit two communities of color against each other, because it removes our vision of like building resistance to white supremacy. It builds divides. And I think it's easy for me to choose that because it's what the system wants us to do. So yeah, personally, I think for me, especially growing up in Chicago and understanding that civil rights, is really based upon the Black community and their action and their work. A lot of the way that we work at our organization is based on civil rights movement that was led by Black folks and Black community members. So I think I have to acknowledge all these parts of myself and our work, and that every day when I'm looking at a lot of leaders, a lot of us are being taught by Black leaders and Black movements and Black resistance movements. I have to acknowledge it every day, and I think for me, it's like, understanding that there's a long road ahead, but also appreciating that there's been a lot of work done intercommunity to make sure that we're at least, listening more and building more and understand our differences to make sure that we can, be there for each other, fill in the blanks, lead in properly. So hopefully that was a good answer.
It was a very meaningful and profound answer from both of you, and very heartfelt. I'm just going to do a follow-up, and then we'll turn to the rest of our questions. I think that you put your finger on this notion of recognizing the common targets of white supremacy being in the two communities we're talking about at this very moment, and that desire to inflame any incidents of conflict. Two things. Do you have any? You talk about data-based research. Would you say that that overwhelmingly the number of hate crimes against that are anti-Asian come from white supremacists, or I mean, if we're using demographics, that they come from the larger dominant white culture rather than African Americans?
Yeah, we might not have that that data, but our partner, Stop API Hate, might have the data of the perpetrators. But we don't. Yeah, when we ask for we still have a hate tracker that was started in 2017, but isn't as popular as Stop API Hates. We just ask for like an anecdotal story. We don't ask for the perpetrator, and then so if they want to share the perpetrator's race. But I remember when I was looking through these the submissions, the race was maybe like 1% included in the submission. So mostly it was just them sharing what happened. No race, but we did see that a majority of the victims were women or elders. So that was the data that we were able to see, but not the perpetrator's race.
And my last follow-up, and Dick Bunce will again appreciate this. It was very generous of you, Jeff, to say that it was the Black civil rights movement, and 1619 makes this point, that built a foundation of civil rights struggle in this country, which a whole range of groups since then have built on. Certainly the Chinese American Exclusion Act and resistance to that, and into the later generations. So it's very generous of you to lift that up in the midst of the topic today, to recognize that. And if that's a hint of how you and Liana and your organization are treating these conversations, it's a very good positive sign for the future. Let me turn, I've got at least 3 hands. Carol Francis.
Yeah. I mentioned in my my introduction that I'm working with IFCO Pastors for Peace, a Harlem-based national group, to bring the news of medical scholarships, free medical scholarships to a medical school in Cuba to people in the United States in medically underserved communities. So I'm wondering, do you know of people, young people in the Asian American Pacific Islander community that would like to become doctors and return to their communities, underserved communities, and work as doctors, that would be interested in this program and these free scholarships?
We would love to uplift this to our community. We're always sharing opportunities available to our community. So please, like, we'd love to learn more information, share that with our community. Yeah, we have a health access program team that does a lot of like what they primarily have done in the past year actually was a lot of COVID-19 specific direct work. So they help a lot of clinics and vaccine clinics and testing clinics. But this year we're actually transitioning a bit more into more policy focused health work again. But yeah, please send us more information. We'd love to learn more and we'll uplift it.
Would you put both of your email addresses in the chat for all these purposes? Anthony.
First, I want to echo what other people have said. It's been an amazing presentation. I thank you for your wonderful work. I have two questions. They're sort of related, but not directly. The first is a sort of based on a book I've just finished reading, but I highly recommend, by Clint Smith, called How the Word is Passed. And it's really about monuments to like Monticello and places like that, where history has been distorted and they're trying to correct the history of what happened during the times of slavery and on. So I'm wondering if you have been involved at all in efforts to remind people of the history of anti-Asian attitudes in our city that need to be remembered. So that's number one, correcting historical amnesia, especially on the part of whites who don't want to remember the past. And two, you brought up something about housing. And of course, that's a subject I'm very interested in. And I wonder if there's unique challenges that Asian Americans are facing when it comes to housing justice and how you might be addressing those unique challenges.
Yeah, I can answer the first part about the history of Asian American education. So our founder, Stuart Kuo, he's president emeritus now. He actually founded this organization called the Asian American Education Project. And it's actually a whole, what they do is that they try to implement more Asian American history into the curriculum for K-12 schools. And they have done such incredible work. I know they're implemented in a number of schools. And Stuart actually recently collaborated with PBS on a 5-part documentary called Asian Americans. I highly, highly recommend it. It's an incredible educational resource on history of Asian Americans, covering everything from the Chinese Exclusion Act to Vincent Chin's murder, and also illustrates a lot about how the Asian American civil rights movement was inspired by the civil rights movement, and how people like Yuri Kochiyama worked with Malcolm X, and how the vibrant history that we have. And I mean, as someone who in my high school curriculum, I never even learned about the Japanese internment camps. This is so important and personal to me. It's just, thinking about it now, it makes me so angry, but that I didn't learn about it until I was in college. But this is just like a small part of like just the incredible way that we have to start young. We have to implement this as, it can't just be a sidebar in our textbooks. It needs to be more than that. But I'll share the link to that work. But the website includes an entire curriculum and a teaching kit, and it's just all the resources anyone could have for Asian American history. And the PBS documentary is also free. So again, we'll consolidate all these links and we'll try to remember every single one, but I'll share that here too.
And on housing issues?
Oh yeah, I think one of the issues that I've seen, or that when I talk to the attorneys that do the work, is that there's not a lot of like culturally competent resources for the APEC tenants. So maybe there's like a language barrier. And obviously, you know, we're facing gentrification at a really high level here in Los Angeles proper, or in Southern California. But yeah, I would say the language barrier comes to mind first, but then like, not to punt it over to you, Lana, but I know that you're working closely with Charles on those materials. So do you want to share?
So I think, I mean, most of the most unique issues that we face are those language barriers. And a lot of, for example, Chinatown, which is where the Cathay Manor case that we're managing right now is, Chinatown's facing so much gentrification, and there are organizations in Chinatown that have been trying to fight against these landlords that have been trying to come in and take over these places that have been occupied by these tenants for years and years. I mean, there is this large like shopping center where a lot of these older Asian American community members have been working for years. And I know like a landlord has recently bought that out and will be demolishing the building. And like in the last couple of years, the last grocery store in Chinatown closed down. So there isn't like a viable grocery store in that area for these people that don't usually drive, and they rely on their surrounding community for food, for these resources. So yeah, it's just like a couple of the issues that they uniquely face. And I know like in Chinatown, like some of these more rundown buildings like Cathay Manor, when they're facing issues like elevators and just basic needs for them to get in and out of their building, it's definitely more prevalent.
Thank you. If folks have asked their question, take your hand down, please. I just want to reinforce and underscore the comment in the chat. Michael's pointed out that there's a very strong pro-reparations for slavery movement in the Japanese American community. And it's so important that we've raised the internment of the Japanese as one of the darkest chapters in American history. And then that the lessons growing, and there was a partial, modest reparations effort as a result of that, which is a precursor for reparations for slavery. But I was also impressed. I had the honor of meeting Fred Korematsu.
Ooh, nice.
And the Korematsu case is a stain on the United States Supreme Court, which has stained itself badly recently. And Fred Korematsu filed briefs when the Bush administration created Guantanamo and the other civil rights cases that were moving through the courts to try to protect detainees and call out the Bush administration for its civil liberties and human rights violations. And Fred Korematsu was at the head of these amicus briefs. And then now the Japanese American community is in many ways supporting the reparations movement. So I'm seeing tremendous intersectionality between these two communities. And I'm just very glad we're getting a chance to elevate that in this conversation. I want to return to bystander intervention in a moment, but Phil, you had a question.
Yes, thank you. I was just thinking about the issue of housing and the API community. And I was realizing that, to me at least, the homelessness population, that API people are invisible. And I don't know if I'm just in the wrong place, but my impression is that the API community takes care of one another, and that might be some explanation for the invisibility of homelessness among that population. Could you comment on that?
Well, we did just start a homelessness prevention program in the last, I believe, year. Is that right, Leanna? Because yeah, as you mentioned, Phil, like there's a huge rise in homelessness or unhoused folks in I think honestly in all of SoCal. And I think I've read anecdotal stories about like, you know, the Vietnamese community, for instance, in Orange County, where there's like, you know, there's like a room in a house and, you know, it's maybe filled pretty tight in there. I honestly think that if you were to go maybe to more Asian American API enclaves, you would see maybe more homelessness of APIs. So I feel like it's, when I go to Orange County, like Westminster, Garden Grove, I see a good amount of like Vietnamese elders or Vietnamese folks who are unhoused. But you know, I don't know. I wish I could give you a better answer, but I probably have to talk to that team more. But I think anecdotally, I do see it more in like Chinatown. I would say I see it sometimes or more often in SGV, like unhoused like Chinese Americans, APIs. And definitely in Long Beach and Carson, I would see some unhoused Filipinos as well. Maybe culturally, you know, there's an idea of like looking out for one another, but I can't confirm that. But I'm not sure. But yeah, we can maybe ask the team and see what their numbers are in their case. So yeah, but Leanna, if you want to chime in, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't think we specifically have a lot of data or research on that front specifically. We would have to check in with our homelessness prevention program, but I know that it's I mean, in Asian like American, like in the Asian American communities, there can be kind of this culture of not speaking up as much, especially like maybe among our older generations. So I think that might also have a hand in like affecting like why sometimes maybe these issues aren't as visible because it's not as vocal. But yeah, something that we definitely have to talk to our HB program and learn more about.
Thank you. Very good question. So the reason I wanted to come back to a bystander intervention training is because I see this as a broader question in many communities and in many interactions that we find ourselves in terms of what is our responsibility when we see a violation of civil liberties and civil rights occurring. In addition to bullies, we have to name law enforcement as well as a cause of these potentially violent moments when some bystander intervention. We all remember that the video of George Floyd's murder was recorded by a courageous young woman who was on scene, and in that sense was a bystander. My first reaction, and I'm eager to hear Jeff and Liana on this, is we've been told not to intervene when we see actions taking place. We're told not to escalate the situation, not to expand the violence or assault that's going on. So we've got about 5 or 7 minutes, and I'm interested in how you frame bystander intervention training, and the video was very helpful. But and I want to expand this a little bit to the reaction, not just to violence, but to racial epithets, and you're in a setting, you're at the Thanksgiving dinner table, and your crazy uncle starts spewing terrible, hateful things in today's context against Asians, and causing the Chinese COVID, all of that era that we lived through. So the intervention can happen in different settings that isn't necessarily bullies and violence. And what, so I'm asking for a mini training. And then I don't know that we can react quick enough to participate in your July training, but offline, I'd like to speak with both of you about maybe a full dress ICU JP advancing justice training among all of us, because I think you're onto something here. So what are your thoughts about what I've raised there?
So I think, so one of the bystander trainers told, we discussed this with, is your own personal safety, no matter what is happening, is number one. That is the most important, no matter what is happening. And Jeff and I aren't bystander trainers. Our trainers actually do undergo a pretty rigorous 40-hour curriculum. So I would really recommend, like, these are the type of questions that they can really answer more fruitfully and with a lot more context. But I think that the question of law enforcement is really difficult, but you'll see that in the training, a lot of the 5 Ds and what they talk about is pretty indirect, and I would say prioritizes your own safety first. And it's not meant to put yourself in a dangerous situation, and it's really framed around that. Jeff, I don't know how what your perspective is on that. I think Jeff is on his way on becoming a bystander trainer. Right?
I'm not sure if I am. But I would say that when I was promoting the trainings, when I first started at the organization, I would share in the caption like how to safely intervene. So as Lena mentioned, like the first priority being your safety. I think the 5 Ds are just options for you to choose from that you think would be the buzzword in the training is your superpower. So if for instance, if it is to distract, maybe it is to like come up to the victim and pretend like you're their friend, and then maybe pull them away from the incident. But again, it's like we definitely don't want to encourage anyone to step in if they don't feel safe. But I think we want to empower community members to see if they do see something, they have options to choose from. So I feel like it's really easy to be scared and to and choose to to let it occur because of fear. But we want to empower. The goal is to empower you to make sure that it's like, I have a choice. Let me step in. Let me be a community member to this member. Let me be a teammate to this community member because I know this is wrong. But it's up to your safety. It's up to your threshold of safety, personal safety, and yeah. So hopefully, I think in that training you'll find the right D for you to pursue when you kind of see the situation happening or unfolding. Yeah.
Well, I can see this as a topic to work on. I want to mention again in this group that the ACLU, yes, I got you, Michael, that the ACLU has an app called Mobile Justice. It's an app on your phone to record a video during any incident, and it uploads in this region to the Southern California ACLU, and is stored under privacy protections so that if your phone is destroyed or confiscated by the police or a bully or anyone involved in such an altercation, you are able to lawfully and peacefully record an incident. And we may talk offline with your trainers to integrate mobile justice into the training, because it's a crucial tool to peacefully and safely record something that's happening. And then, of course, later people can deal with the accountability and the consequences of that. Michael, as we come to a close here.
Yeah, I just briefly want to follow up on something you said, Steve, which is I was part of the LA County Human Relations Commission Hate Crimes Network for a number of years in the late 80s, early 90s. I was very frustrated with it because it was so heavily dominated by law enforcement at that time. And I was just curious about that because it was frustrating to me that, and I appreciate your the bystander training, and in general, I think we're looking for, sort of community defense efforts as opposed to, criminalization. And so often when the police get involved, they make the problem worse. So I was curious about your take on that.
Yeah, we definitely tread lightly with working with law enforcement because we also understand that a lot of community members in the APEC community don't trust law enforcement, given their status, given, the language barriers, given whatever it might be. So even for me, working with the DA's office, we did a presentation from a detective on hate crimes in LA County, and I was kind of like, I'm very like pro-community, not necessarily pro-police. So I was kind of like not into that presentation at all. So we do we're careful as an organization and how much we work with the LAPD and just law enforcement in general. We do know that there's a piece there that is maybe or possibly a good kind of connection to have, but personally, I feel like I wouldn't, if I was the CEO, I probably wouldn't work with them at all. But given my CEO's background in DV, given her experience with DV victims, she understands, she's seen the role that law enforcement has played with in those situations. But we're definitely trying to be mindful of, we have a lot of folks on staff who are, teaching her things. We're having open discussions about law enforcement and the issues that are in the APA community at least, but also communities of color. Especially, in 2020 with George Floyd, I think, we had to really challenge a lot of our staff members about how we look at the police. Because a lot of them, I'll say from personal experience, the org internally was pretty progressive. But it's changed a little bit with our new hires. So I think there's a lot of teaching there. But yeah, I think, Michael, in my experience with the LAD, the DA's office, and also Human Relations Commission, I'm very careful about if there's police presence in terms of the meetings. But also, I think at this point with the LA versus Hate Coalition, there hasn't been any. It's more communities, more CBO partners talking to each other about what they're seeing at least. But yeah, we're super careful. I'm super careful, at least personally, when I'm in there, and just personally with my own activism. Yeah.
Thank you. Any additional thoughts on that, Liliana?
Yeah, just to reiterate what Jeff said, we really do tread lightly when it comes to law enforcement. And I would say that definitely within the last few years, it's just, we always have like more discussions and more open conversation about how involved we should be in our organization.
Well, thank you both. A really extraordinary morning, packed with important and profound information. I appreciate both of you dedicating your work and your lives to this. It's clear that we have several avenues to work together beyond today's presentation, and we'll be in touch with you. You've put your information, and I encourage everyone on this screen to be in touch with you if anything that's been raised for volunteer opportunities and other educational follow-up. So I've said this before, the two of you are now card-carrying members of ICUJP. Please rejoin us on Friday mornings when you see a program that is of interest to you. We're going to look to you for coalitional support in the future. Let me give Ruby a little heads up if at the end of our circle you can give us a closing prayer and sending us off for the week ahead. What we do in this moment is to leave space for announcements. If any organizations or others have any announcements that haven't been covered already, please do so now. And with seeing none, we're opening the circle now as if we were joining hands together at Emmanuel Presbyterian Church. We're going on 2.5 years ago. We used to join together, really to bring into this circle friends, family, colleagues, others who are struggling, who need a good word and need to be lifted up.
If you can spare some thoughts for my dad, he's been he had hip replacement last week, and he's doing good. You know, strong guy, always been independent, and I think that's kind of weighing on him too. So he wants to get out there and pitch for the Dodgers. He's 98, so I don't think he's at, you know, he's not old enough yet to retire. So I think he can reach his dream. But yeah, if you can spare a thought about him getting better, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Rick. Give him our best. By acclamation, we're sending hugs to your dad. I will say that too many friends and friends of friends have contracted COVID in these last few weeks. It is on the rise. We cannot lower our guard. We have to, of course, be vaccinated and boosted. I'm waiting to find out when I can get my third booster. But mask up, be careful in every setting. Don't relax. I have good friends. They're okay, but some of them are really feeling the symptoms of it and are being knocked out by it. So please renew and your care, and among your family and friends and others. This thing is still with us.
Yeah, wishing Maggie a refuah shlema.
Yes, Maggie. Anyone else coming into the circle?
Yes, I would like to ask for your prayers and thoughts. You may remember Andre Van Zyl, Deborah and Andre Van Zyl, who were very active with the Parliament of the World Religions. Andre just had knee surgery earlier this week, knee replacement surgery, and he's in recovery now. And so just hold our colleague in your prayers.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Dr. Ruby, please send us off.
And you know, this is the world we're talking about here. It's all nationalities coming together in positive trade. And this is just enjoying each other's languages, enjoying the artwork and sharing, and enjoying the music, enjoying the peace and the love, enjoying the positive trade in the medicine. knowing that, and we're talking about these people that were named. Andrea, as the heat of his knee is already there. We're talking about people making the choice to do what they need to do regarding their health, regarding their focus on it's okay to be vaccinated again. It's regarding Rick's father. Yes, he'll raise his arms to throw a ball or to catch or whatever way he chooses, no matter what age he is. Because this is where we are as a world. We're in the light, the wisdom, the love, the sharing, the release of what we need to that's blocking any of our good. And I know right now as we come together that anything that has not been spoken, it is already done for the highest good. And as I know and accept this, I'm grateful for this presentation today, for all that's been spoken and all that will be traded and spoken from this. And as I give it all to that divine power that we call God, Allah, Jehovah, or just it, I just give it all to that power in thanksgiving prayer. And so it is. Ashe. Amen. Allah.
Amen. Thank you so much. Thanks to our speakers. Thanks to Jasmine for her wonderful reflection. Let's call it 9:40. The board will stay on these screens and reconvene at 9:40. To everyone else, we wish you good health and the best, and please rejoin us next Friday.